Hello students, this is Mr. Smith and I'm sharing with you the video Arrays Part 2. This is in our Math Facts Strategies series of several strategies that you'll be learning in order to do your math facts. And one of the ways that you can learn and do your math facts and figuring out those facts is by using arrays. And so today this is Arrays Part 2. And just a reminder that we talked in our first video about arrays, which was Arrays Part 1. And if you haven't watched that, you need to watch that one first. That will certainly help before you watch this video. That we have rows and we have columns. Just to remind you of what those are, the rows go from left to right, and the columns, of course, go top to bottom. This particular array right here happens to be a 4 by 5 array. There are 4 rows, hence the number 4, and there are 5 columns in our array. And we have 4 by 5, and we write it by this like this, and we can also say 4 times 5. So today what we're going to do is we're going to look at these arrays and we're going to break them down is what we're going to do. We're going to break them into 2 arrays out of the 1. Now, it's very, very important that you understand before we do that I'm not changing the number of dots inside the array. So for this particular one, our 3 by 7, with 3 by 7 we have 21 dots, and you can see all of those are here. I am not going to change those dots, and when you start breaking down arrays, you will not change the number of dots in them either. You're simply forming them in different ways is what you're actually going to end up doing. So what that looks like is this. I'm going to break one array into 2 arrays, and so that's really what we're focusing on here, is that I'm going to make that one array into 2 arrays. And so let me give you a visual as to what that would look like. I would take one and break it away from the other one. Now again, remember, I am not changing the number of dots that we originally had. If you recall, we had 21 dots. And so I'm going to bring in my number system here, and you can see here that I have 15 total dots there from that original array, and then I have the remaining set over here. So to continue counting on from 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. I have not changed the number of dots here. So the first thing I did is I broke one array into 2 arrays. Also, when I did that, just the trick for you to remember here is this number 2 here. Make one of the 2 new arrays have 5 columns. And so again, going back to that column idea, make sure that you keep one of those arrays having 5 columns. And that's what I did right here. So I'm breaking our array, our original one, 3 by 7, into an array of 3 by 5 is what I'm going to do, is what I did. Let's move on. Now, you can't do what I just did on the computer on a grid piece of paper. So what you can do instead is using your pencil, you could easily just simply circle those 5 columns, making one array which is circled, or squared, or rectangled, however you want to think about that, and the other one doesn't have anything around it. So again, this is going to look exactly like I have over on the previous page, where I have 3 rows and I have 5 columns. And so I'll back up a page and you can see that I have that here. So I simply took this 3 by 7 and I broke it down into 2 arrays. One of them has 5 columns. Let's do it again here with 4 by 8. Now, if I were to count the number of dots here, I'm going to get 32. And you just have to trust me on that. There's 32 dots here. Again, I'm not changing the number of dots that are on here. To break this down, I would again want to make a column, or an array with 5 columns, and then the leftovers just simply go over here. So one of the arrays is going to have 5 columns, and the other array is going to end up actually having 3 in this particular case. Back here, when we did this one, we ended up having 5 columns and we had 2 columns left over. So this one is going to have 5 columns and 3 left over here. And again, on your piece of paper, what you could do is take your pencil, go ahead and circle those 5 columns, and then you have the leftovers over here. And again, you do have that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in that one, and you have 1, 2, 3 columns left over here. I'm going to move on to another one. So here's what we do. We're going to break one array into two arrays. You already know that. We're going to make one of the two arrays have 5 columns, and that's also what we had talked about today. So I'm going to take this array down here. This happens to be a 6 by 7, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 rows by 7 columns. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And we want to make two arrays out of it. And remember, one of the arrays has to have 5 columns. So I'm going to start over here in the corner, and I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and just simply draw a round to make that new array. And then I have the leftovers here. Now, one of the interesting things about this is that you're going to notice number 3 here. It says the rows will stay the same from the original array. Now what that means is in the original array we said we had 6 by 7. This one's still going to have 6 rows going across. So this one that I did in blue is now a 6 by 5 array. If you remember, we have 5 columns. And this other one is going to be 6 rows. But how many columns is it going to have? So it's got our 6 rows, and it's going to have 2 columns. Let's back up to the previous one here, and let's write this one down. So in this one, we had originally a 4 by 8 array, and we broke it down into two arrays, one of them with 5 columns. So what's the new array right here going to be? Well, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 rows, and this is, of course, having 5 columns because that was the rule that we made. And this one has the 1, 2, 3, 4 rows. And how many columns did we say this one's going to have? 1, 2, 3. So this one's going to be a 4 by 5 and a 4 by 3. Let's back up even further and go to our very first one. So originally we had 3 by 7. Now we're going to have how many rows? 1, 2, 3. Well, that stays the same. So the rows are going to stay the same, but the columns are changing. We had 7 columns. Now we're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 columns for this first one. And what's in the leftover? Count the rows first. 1, 2, 3. And how many for these columns? 1, 2, as you can see there. So this one gets broke down into 3 times 2 and 3 times 5. Let's move forward again in our thinking, and I want you to try this one. We're going to break this array into two arrays. You're going to make one of the two arrays have 5 columns. The rows are going to stay the same from the original array, so let's figure out that first. How many rows are there? Yep, that's right. There happen to be 3 rows in the original problem. And how many columns are there? Figure that out next, please. 9 is what you should have got. So 3 by 9 is what this array happens to be. Go ahead and break it into two arrays. Remember, one of the arrays has to have 5 columns. And now let's write our two arrays with our numbers. So what is this array going to be? How many rows? It's also the original amount. We're going to keep that. So we should have 3 by how many columns? Yeah, 5. That was our rule, right? Make it have 5. And so what's left over? 1, 2, 3 by how many? 1, 2, 3, 4. So this array got broke down into 3 by 5 and 3 by 4. This is going to conclude this video on arrays part 2. You will have an arrays part 3, and good luck with your work.